Open your spiritual eyes and put on the full armor of God and keep Christ in your heart. Don't be deceived.
One and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, roll, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading down range. Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles most of the flight, 104%. We'll throttle down to 65% shortly. Engines at 65%. 3 engines running normally. 3 good fuel cells. 3 good ADUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles. Engines throttling up. 3 engines now at 104%. Challenger, go and throttle up. Challenger, go and throttle. A minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
I was just a kid watching this in 1986 when our teacher rolled out a TV on the metal stand and said we were going to watch the Space Shuttle Challenger take off live on TV. So the whole class got together and got excited to watch this space shuttle launch, and this is what we witnessed. For the first time ever, people from the public arena would be able to take a trip into space on the Space Shuttle Challenger. Because before this, it's always been just the government going out to space. So when the public wanted to finally go, they gave us a chance. Now, what they didn't want you to know is that they themselves have never been outside of this atmosphere. They've never made it beyond the firmament of the dome.
Yeah. We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has...
Now, this is just my opinion, but if you ask me, I think they made this space shuttle blow up to scare the heck out of the public from ever wanting to try to go up in space again, because all the money they've made through different programs and donations for space exploration that was put out. They knew that they didn't want to let that money go. So they had to continue with the lie that we've been on the moon, that we've been outer space, and that we're flying to Mars and sending satellites to take pictures. All the while, all this stuff is being put together in multi-million-dollar studios, and they still don't do a very good job. Now, I'm not saying this video was faked, because this is real as ever, as real as it gets right here. All these people came out to watch this shuttle take off, and it just blows up like that. Now, what I want to know is, has this ever been attempted again? Have any teachers, doctors, lawyers, people from the public arena, has anybody ever tried to go back out into space again. Now, you know, I hear about like private programs and private companies that will fly you out into space for a certain price, but you know, if we haven't been into space, you got to think these space stations that they say they're out here building, they must be built just somewhere on Earth, maybe in Antarctica. You know, maybe they're just out there building giant spaceships on that ice, and then when the time comes, they're gonna fly them out in the middle of the night and cover the whole entire sky with their ships. I've had many dreams and visions about the sky being covered by giant spaceships, you know. But don't be deceived, these are not extraterrestrial intelligence. These are highly knowledgeable demons, you know. These are demons, folks. We're not dealing with green alien spacemen or tall whites or none of that. Those are demons.
The lunar surface is one of the most recognizable in history. But why are such important images so grainy and hard to see?
And we're getting a picture on the TV.
You got a good picture, huh?
NASA claims it's the result of 1960s technology.
NASA orchestrated the hoax in a very unique way through television. One picture, which they completely controlled, black and white, grainy, that convinced everybody we were on the moon. We had no reason to doubt it. They had complete reins over the pictures, over the sound. I mean, sad to say, it was easier than people believe.
The evidence suggesting that these images were staged.
It's absolutely unreal.
Although it appears that the astronauts are moving in the moon's gravity, which is 1/6 that of the Earth, Percy notes that when the speed of the film is doubled, the astronauts appear to be running as if in Earth's gravity. Also, when the footage of the lunar rover is doubled in speed, it looks as if it's driving here on Earth. If there is no air or wind on the moon, why is this American flag waving?
The fact that the flag flaps on the moon where there's no atmosphere means that there must have been a little blast of wind out in Area 51 where they shot this.
Could these questionable images simply be the result of astronauts struggling to plant the flag into the lunar surface? Or is there more going on than meets the eye? What about the still photography? Some say the design of the bulky spacesuits would have made it extremely difficult for the astronauts to operate their chest-mounted cameras. The man who designed these cameras is Jan Lundberg.
Once on the moon, on the lunar surface, in the dress, in the life support system, you couldn't see the camera. They couldn't bend their head that far down. They had no viewfinder, they had to aim by moving their body.
Click, click, click.
If the cameras were so difficult to manipulate, how were thousands of photos taken with crystal clarity and precise framing?
The pictures that we see that allegedly were taken on the moon are absolutely perfect.
But with closer examination, Casing says flaws begin to emerge.
Unfortunately, errors were made which are now being discovered.
Point out that lighting is a major flaw in the lunar photos. Case in point, on the moon, the astronauts' only source of light was the sun.
They had no extra lighting, no flashes or things like that.
Yet in this photograph from Apollo 14, the shadows are cast in different directions, suggesting multiple light sources.
The shadows cast by the rocks in the foreground should have been east-west, like the LEM shadows.
And in this photo from Apollo 17, again the shadows are pointing in different directions.
Outside in sunlight, shadows always run parallel with one another. So the shadows will never intersect.
It's not just the shadows that indicate the use of additional lights, but what has been photographed in the shadows. For example, here's an astronaut who descends into a huge shadow cast by the lunar module. Yet his entire body is still visible. How is it that he is not shrouded in darkness? Here's the same maneuver from another Apollo mission. Again, the astronaut is brightly lit in what is obviously dark shadow. And in this picture, the sun is directly behind the astronaut. His figure should be a silhouette. Yet even the smallest characteristics of his suit are recognizable.
It seems like he's standing in the spotlight. And I can't explain that. That escapes me. Why?
And finally, in this picture with the sun behind the lunar module, the front of the craft is clearly visible. The words United States are crisp and clear. How could these backlit pictures be so detailed?
It's because there's more than one light source, which means they're not on the moon.
But NASA simply dismisses these arguments. But the questions continue. Why do some of these images shot at different times and different places appear to have identical backgrounds? These two photos seem to have the same mountain backdrop, yet the lunar module is only present in one of them. Seemingly impossible, since the LEM never moved and its base remained even after the mission.
What a ride, what a ride.
Some suggest the same artificial backdrop was used when shooting two entirely separate pictures. Background discrepancies are also apparent in the lunar video.
The best evidence are some pictorial anomalies in the photographic record of the trip to the moon. There is one for Apollo 16 where the same shot, the same hill, appears in 2 different days.
This tape was shot on what was reported to be the first of Apollo 16's lunar excursions.
But it couldn't pick a better spot.
And this video was from the next day at a different location.
That is the most beautiful sight.
NASA claims the second location was 2.5 miles away. But when one video is superimposed over the other, the locations appear identical.
It's absolutely unreal.
Even closer examination of the photos suggests evidence of doctoring. For reference, crosshairs were permanently etched into the lunar cameras, so they would have to appear on top of every image. But in this photo, a crosshair is behind a part of the lunar rover.
This situation is impossible and has to be the result of technical manipulation and doctoring of the image.
And in this photo from Apollo 11, the equipment in the foreground is covering the crosshair, not behind it. And in another from Apollo 12, the American flag is covering one crosshair, and the astronaut is covering the other. When presented with these questionable photos and videos, Apollo was a hoax.
Hi everyone, and welcome to yet another controversial Better Mankind video. I think subconsciously there must be a part of me that enjoys the onslaught of nasty comments when I make videos like this. But the fact remains that there's way more evidence that supports the theory that we never went to the moon than there is to support that we ever did. Now there are many reasons that prove we never went to the moon. To mention a few, you have the wavy flag in a zero atmosphere environment, the lack of any blast crater underneath the lunar module, Or how about the absence of stars in space? The problem with any of these arguments is that NASA seems to have an explanation for every single one of them. Therefore, people like me and other moon landing deniers are referred to as a bunch of crazy tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy kooks that need to up their medication. So in this video, I'm only going to address a single discrepancy that NASA themselves have admitted to on more than one occasion, and will prove without a doubt that we have never even left low Earth orbit, let alone landed a man on the moon. But first, let's go back to school and get a refresher course on the different atmospheres surrounding the Earth. Now, the following information is critical to proving my point, so please bear with me. First, we have the troposphere. This is where all of our weather occurs, and it is the lowest layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It starts at the Earth's surface and extends up to a height of 4 to 10 miles. Next, we have the stratosphere, which extends to about 35 miles above the Earth's surface. This is where our ozone layer resides and protects us from those dangerous UV rays. It is also the layer where aircraft travels, as it is free from weather disturbances. Now we go up to the mesosphere, where most meteors burn up on entry. The mesosphere stretches up to 50 miles above the Earth's surface. Next, we have the thermosphere, and this layer extends up to 400 miles from the Earth's surface, and the air here is very thin. Also, temperatures here start to get really hot, ranging anywhere from 200 to 500 degrees Celsius and 500 to 2000 degrees Celsius in the upper region. And last but not least is the exosphere. The temperature in the exosphere can vary from 0 to 1700 degrees Celsius. The exosphere is the outermost layer of the Earth's atmosphere and is around 6,200 miles from the Earth's surface. Now, according to NASA, low Earth orbit is around 1,200 miles from the Earth's surface. So before I tell you the reasons why it is impossible for us to go beyond the exosphere, or for that matter even past the thermosphere, have a listen to what some NASA experts have to say about this topic.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Hang on. So what you're saying is that in order to send humans through this region, we need to solve the challenge of getting through the Van Allen radiation belts? But I'm confused. Didn't you already solve this challenge back in 1969 when you sent astronauts to the moon, and subsequently 5 other times after that?
But we're also really pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
So she's a NASA astronaut, but I guess no one bothered to tell her about the first time that we left low Earth orbit. I guess she might be a little too young to remember. Here we have another astronaut that wasn't told about the moon landing 48 years ago.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Once we travel beyond low Earth orbit, the crew will be exposed to larger amounts of radiation. So we have to design both the crew protection systems and our electronic systems to withstand this radiation.
So that would mean that Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin were a tough bunch of SOBs able to withstand all that brutal radiation, considering these challenges are still yet to be solved. So how is it that we had the technology to achieve this amazing feat back in 1969, but we're still working on the technology in 2017, almost half a century later? Well, I managed to find a very clever and well-informed astronaut that will totally straighten things out for us and explain exactly why we're not able to return to the moon and break through those Van Allen radiation belts. Have a listen to this clever chap.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
This guy, oh boy. Here's a real-life example of what can happen to you when you're exposed to all of that outer space radiation. And if you're a child with aspirations of becoming an astronaut, being a very good liar might be a positive attribute to have on your resume. Now, just by showing you these admissions of guilt by NASA, I can easily end this video now, and I would have easily proven my point without a shadow of a doubt. But I'm sure that for some of you hardened skeptics out there, this damaging evidence is still not enough. So let's take this theory of mine to the next level. This here is the lunar module now proudly displayed at the National Air and Space Museum. According to NASA, the primary materials used to build the module were aluminium alloy, stainless steel, titanium, nickel steel alloy, heat-resistant glass. Now, if this is the case, we have a very serious discrepancy here. If you remember earlier when I went through the different atmospheres that surround the Earth, both the thermosphere and exosphere have temperatures ranging from 0 to 2000 degrees Celsius. So I decided to examine the melting points of the primary metals that were used to build the lunar module. First off, we have the aluminium alloy, which has a melting point of 463 degrees Celsius. Next we have stainless steel, which has a melting point of 1510 degrees Celsius. Then we also have nickel steel alloy, which melts at 1453 degrees Celsius, and of course the heat resistant glass for the windows, which has a melting point of 760 degrees Celsius. So this would mean that the lunar module, along with its occupants, would have disintegrated well before it even passed through the thermosphere, let alone surviving the Van Allen radiation belts in the exosphere. To protect the astronauts from the Van Allen radiation belts, the lunar module would have required 6 feet of lead shielding. But here's what they really had for protection.
Obviously, the only shielding they had was the literally paper-thin outer hull of aluminum, and their suits consisting of glass fiber, some aluminum fibers, and silicon rubber.
It's very interesting concerning radiation that the astronauts were protected by a thin film of aluminum, when here on Earth they put a lead shield on us when they take a dental x-ray.
In conclusion, when NASA themselves admit to never having left low Earth orbit, and the fact that we don't even have the materials that could withstand the extreme temperatures and cosmic rays in space, how on earth can anyone believe that we ever went to the moon? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like my content, please give me the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you have your own opinions about the moon landing, feel free to leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. Until next time, take care and be good to each other.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.